We have successfully made it so when you sign up, sign in with Google, add a new account, generate information, make an account, this creates a user with unique information such as their email, a uniquely selected profile image that is reflected in our Firestore here with user, unique identifier, user profile, profile image, and user email. Therefore, from start to finish, we now have the ability to have users authenticated with accounts, and on top of that, create unique specific data associated with that user. So if Chicken Raccoon logs out, Chicken Raccoon logs back in, we got the same data. Welcome back to the series where I'm showing you how to actually build out backends for your applications. If you're just joining me now, we've already set up our application, we've already set up hosting for our application, and we've gone as far as setting up authentication. Therefore, bye-bye auth. In today's video, we're going over Firestore and how to set that up in our backend. Now, if you want to watch the first 3 lessons here, check them in the description down below. It'll be in a playlist called Let's Set Up a Backend with AI. Let's jump in here and actually build out a Firestore or database for our application. Up to this point in this series, we have a React application that connects to a live website link, and we have the ability for authentication, e.g., let's sign up a new user. I'm signing in through Google. Add new account, auto-generate information, sign with Google, go to a dashboard, auth context. We've gone over this. We've done this. On to the next. Before I show you how to do the next step here, let me go and just draw on the whiteboard what we're about to do here so you can conceptually understand what's about to occur. So right now, let's just say we got Bob here. And Bob's a new user, or not a new user, but Bob just arrived to the site. We have no information on Bob other than Bob is Bob. Once Bob goes to sign in page and either signs up with email or Google, this is where we come into play and what we're about to set up today. So we got to do 2 things. First thing we got to do is we got to set up a function which sole purpose will be an onCreate. E.g., this function will only fire if Bob, hello Bob, how you doing today? If Bob is this is the first time they've ever signed up. If Bob logs in again, this function won't fire. This is a very unique function to authentication when it comes to Firebase. It'll make more sense as we get going here, but we'll have a function that fires off. And within this function will go ahead and set docs within our database associated with Bob. So we're going to have a global doc here. This is going to be called users. So I'll put U for now. Every user of our platform is going to be associated with users. E.g., we come in here, it's going to be this big collection you'll see here. With users here, then how do we identify which user is which user? So the way we're going to identify who is Bob and how we know who Bob is what authentication does for us. What's super cool about authentication, which this is in the prod version, so let me go ahead, or QA, whatever you want to call it. Let me go ahead and show you in the emulator. Localhost 4000, hit enter. We set this up in the previous tutorial here. If you go to authentication, what you'll notice is that each user that signs up gets a user UID. This is a unique identification number. This is extremely important. This is the number or the string that's going to allow us to identify, for example, this user's Grass Olive, everything associated with Grass Olive, subscriptions, personal preferences, everything, y'all. So this UID is extremely important. Therefore, when we set up our database, we're going to reference that. Coming back over to our whiteboard here, we got users, which is a generic text of users. Users will then lead into the thing I just showed you, which is going to be their UID. Their UID is going to be able to basically identify this is Bob. So user Bob has this UID. Then from here, this is where we set up docs. So this could be a doc for settings, a doc for preferences, a doc for value points that we provide them, a doc for etc. What you'll also notice is that this UID is going to come very fundamental in the sense of further tutorials we do here when it comes to functions, storage, basically everything else, right? This is how we identify who Bob is. So let's go ahead and find out who Bob is and begin this tutorial. All right, so coming back over here, we got everything set up here, but you notice we're still in the auth branch. Let me jump back over here, y'all, and let's begin here. And before we jump a little bit further here, if anything comes up during this tutorial where you're just like, what the heck's going on? I don't understand. One side thing, obviously, is that this entire repository at the end of this tutorial will be available in the description down below for free. You can copy and paste my code. Alternatively, you could use a software like BumpUps that allows you to input a video like this and actually talk to it and then get the exact terminal commands or different questions you may have during the process and tutorial that you see here today. Let's go and jump in. First off, we got to get out of this branch because we are done with auth. So I'm going to do get branch just to confirm we're in auth here. Let's zoom in a little bit so y'all don't have to zoom in. And then we're going to do get add, because it looks like there's a little bit of stuff going on here, because there's a little asterisk to the left here. Git add, git commit -m. We'll just say auth done for now. And then git push origin. And then we will push origin to this specific branch, which is just auth, enter. Oh no. Fantastic. This is probably due to the fact that I have multiple projects associated with a bunch of different gits, a bunch of different access. Let me figure this out. I've gone ahead and fixed that. And just in case you run into that issue, because this can be very frustrating, you're going to basically put in this line right here. And right where it says, your token, you'll put your token. And to find that, go over to GitHub. And obviously make sure that the directory is the correct one. So mine's actual backend Git. Yours would be whatever yours is. So then you come over to your settings here, and then you go over developer settings, and then come to personal access tokens, fine grained tokens, go to the specific token associated with the project. We set this up in earlier tutorials. Click it. And then here, just hit regenerate token. Copy it, paste it right there, and then that should give you access back to your directory. I just know I lost access because, just trust me, I have a lot of different projects in a lot of different areas. And as I referenced before, use bump ups. That can help you out with the directions there as well. Okay, let's actually get going here. So now that we have finished that, we have pushed auth here, let's go ahead and merge our branch here and then create a new branch for Firestore. In this video, we're going to be doing a lot when it comes to Firestore, but also functions. So this is kind of like a mesh one. In theory, the next video is going to be much more focused and dedicated towards functions, and specifically functions that we can set up using an AI provider like OpenAI. I'm basically going to show you how to actually call that endpoint of like chat completion or get an AI output within your software. For now, though, we got to make sure that we have a unique identifier for Bob. Compare and pull request. Auth done. Sounds good. Create pull request. I might have to make a whole video of just like how to navigate through GitHub to make all this look a little bit more simple. For now, though, we're good. Merge pull request. Confirm merge. This is basically taking the code here and putting it to our main. And the reason we do this is because if we really, really mess up, we want to make sure that we're not messing with the main branch, because the main branch in software development is kind of like the don't touch this branch. If this branch breaks, everything breaks. So now that we've merged that, we can go ahead and delete the auth branch. So we're going to do git branch just to confirm that we're probably not in main. There we go. Git checkout, main. And then we're going to go ahead and do git pull origin. This is going to grab the code from the cloud or GitHub, have it set to our main branch here. There we go. So what you'll notice is that we're main now. I'm going to go ahead and do git checkout or git branch -d, capital D, auth. And over time, y'all, when you start developing more, like you might be like, yo, how the heck is Corbin typing all this stuff out so fast off the top of his head? It just becomes natural over time because you just remember commands you reference. I know when I first started development, I was like, what the heck? What's going on in terminal? Don't worry, it becomes natural. For now, though, we're going to set a new branch here. This is going to be we're going to call this branch, which is git checkout B. We'll say new user data. Yeah, that's actually a pretty good name. Okay. We're in new user data. Always make sure you have the most recent main branch so you don't run into merge conflicts. What a merge conflict is that basically the branch code comparative to the main code, there is a major issue. We don't like those. So don't do that. For now, though, let's go ahead and set this up. Yes, I'm wearing a new shirt. It's a new day. Basically, what just happened right there is right where that just cut off, I got a Slack message from my team. And the software I'm currently developing, we're getting extreme momentum right now. We just pushed out a new update, bump ups. That's beyond the point. Before we even get further into this video, I want to kind of give a pretext of what we're about to do right now. Two major things I want you to know. First major thing, the topics I'm about to discuss right now are pretty complex. So if you don't understand them right off the bat and you feel a little overwhelmed, that's natural. There's a lot of new information, and we're straight up developing software, y'all. This isn't like we're creating a pot, okay? Like a little pottery pot. We're creating software. So if any of these concepts seem overwhelming or just like what's going on, that's natural. The second thing here, if you run into errors after this video and you hit walls, it is extremely, I've been developing since I was 12, y'all. You know what the most common thing for developers is that like is very common? It's when you get an error and you will spend hours trying to solve that error. That's natural. That's common. That isn't like, maybe coding isn't for me. No. That is natural. You spending hours trying to solve an error and then finally solving it, that's how it works. And what's great is that once you solve that error, if it comes up again, you know how to solve it in the future. And last little thing on that topic, there's a little weird thing in software and coding. It must be something to do with the brain. Who knows? You get an error, you spend hours on it, you still don't solve it, you sleep on it, and then in the next morning, you'll be able to solve it in like 10, 20 minutes. That's a real thing. Sometimes you just got to step away. Okay, that's all out of the way. Let me walk you through this because this is going to be a lot. Let's jump it. So the name of the game right now is that in our dashboard, I went ahead and set up some like easy front end code. And what this is basically we're going to be loading in 2 variables from the back end just to show you how it works with Firestore. We're going to be loading in a profile image and a user email. I'm going to show you how to set up static profile images, e.g. like stock ones. If you ever signed up for a SaaS platform like Adobe or something like that, sometimes you'll see like a little artwork for your profile. I'll show you how to do that. This is going to show you how to leverage Firestore in the front end as well. And then we're going to be setting up the function. This is going to be the big one right here. This is going to be the one that's like, if you run into errors, it's natural. Trust me. This is a lot. Let's do it. To best showcase how we're approaching this, I'm going to show you a complete file, and then we're going to do an entire file together. Here we go. Okay. First major thing you need to know. Right now, when it comes to Google Cloud Functions, there is V1 and V2. Typically, we want to opt for V2 as it is better for software development. E.g., as you see here with the /V2, and specifically this function here, which is an HTTP request. Basically, we're sending data to it, and then we'll receive data from it. That's fine. That's all good. There are certain functions that you can only run in version 1 of Google Cloud. And one of these functions is going to be our onCreate one, which is functionsauth.user.onCreate. This is not negotiable. This has to be a V1. And we have to use a very certain version of Firebase. Why, Corbin? Because it doesn't work in V2. This function is a Gen 1 function only. If you don't know what Gen 1, Gen 2 is, just put it this way. Everything past this is going to be Gen 2. We're going to be making a whole separate folder that's going to be Python-based, all Gen 2. We want to go that way, but we are obligated to use first gen when it comes to just the function that it fires only once when a user signs up. There is a ton of implications behind what I just said there. So let me just walk you through some steps here. I'm going to walk you through some commands that you may need to run or may not need to run. Just depends. I know that sounded a little weird, but trust me, when you start doing this process, you're going to come back to this part of the video and be like, okay, maybe I should run that one, maybe I shouldn't, etc. That is why I prefaced a lot of this, because don't worry, we all run into errors. First major thing you need to know. When we do a first gen function like this, we need to ensure that we're using the correct version of Firebase in our package.json found in our function folder. E.g., your dependencies here, which is Firebase admin and Firebase functions, we'll zoom in, needs to be 5.1.1 for Firebase functions. But Corbin, this isn't the most up-to-date version. I want to use 6.0. I want to use 7.0, or whenever you're watching this video, maybe 10.0, or maybe by then they actually fixed this issue for second gen. But beyond that, no, trust me, use that one. If you don't trust me, then go ahead. Update Firebase functions to the most recent version, and then tell me how it goes. That's the first major one. Obviously, when approaching this, explain this to ChatGPT, Claude, Cursor AI. That is what needs to happen so you get the right commands. But here is the command that you need to use here. First off, just manually put in 5.1.1. I want you to do cd function. This is going to put us in this function folder here. I then want you to put the command npm uninstall Firebase functions, and then we're going to go ahead and save the new version. We're going to do npm and then ignore the 5.01 to make that 5.1.1. We're going to do npm install Firebase functions that save. To verify you did it correctly, you're going to do this next command. npm list. List typically is just like, what's the data showing? Firebase functions. There we go. You should see something like that. If you see that, you're on the right track. So now that we're on the right track here, we're using the right version of Firebase functions, and you just learned something new today. Using the most up-to-date dependency on every single dependency you install. When I say dependency, this is like external stuff you use in your application. Like during payments, when we install Stripe here, it's going to show up as a dependency. So realize, sometimes in more up-to-date versions, stuff just doesn't work. That is why specifically in the code we're creating today, and that is why we're only doing one function within Node.js, because this doesn't work with Python. This only works with Gen 1. If you feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, trust me, there is a ton of forums on this topic, and no one seems to get the answer right on this. Okay, beyond all that though, this is how we do it. So I put in this like HTTP function second gen just to give you context of how we reference V2 in Node.js. For us though, we're not going to be doing V2s in JS. We're going to only be doing this one, Gen 1 in JS. Don't worry, I'm going to show you line by line how we do this. But first off, let's just deploy it and just read some of the logs here. I'm going to give you some troubleshooting abilities. So first off, let's go back to our head directory here, which would be the head of the app. Now that we're here, obviously Firebase log out, Firebase log in, make sure you're using the right project, etc. If you want to know you're using the right project, Firebase projects, semicolon list again. You'll start learning these little terms. Actual backend app, we're using the correct one. Okay, perfect. Let's keep going here. And we'll set up this index.js together here. But now that we've done that, just to show you some debug logs, we put in a line here, Firebase deploy. When I do Firebase deploy by itself, This will deploy hosting, Firestore, functions, whatever you have in your application, it'll deploy the entire Firebase. Because we only care about functions right now, just do Firebase deploy only functions, which is self-explanatory. Hit enter. So what this does is this is going to create the two functions you see here in our Firebase, where we have hello world on user create. If I come over to my Firebase here, I go to functions, you'll see that they exist here. There we go. And you'll see that they're updating in Node.js, second gen, first gen, etc. If you want to learn more about that, just type in Firebase, second gen, first gen difference, or Google Cloud Functions difference. You'll be able to get a better context on that. But like with anything, it's like iPhone 10, iPhone 11, or I guess the better way of putting it is like iPhone 8, iPhone 12. Obviously, when the number gets higher, it's probably better. In most contexts, obviously here we have to use first gen. When running deployment, especially the first time you do this, it's going to take a little while as it's like a cold start. When you build out full-blown software and you have really big applications, this is kind of like a running joke. When you're pushing to QA, QA is like staging environment. It's a duplication of your prod environment. Production is what the user sees and user plays around with. QA staging is like what you play around with, but like as similar to the production environment as possible. This will make more sense when I do the other playlist where I actually show you how to build a software from start to finish. The idea is that when you deploy like this at very large applications, it can take some time. It can take 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I know software engineers that it takes like 30 minutes. So keep that in mind. I mean, early days, don't worry, it'll be fast. So once we do that, deployment complete here, you'll notice if we come over here, obviously it will show up right here and we're good to go. But you're going to run into some issues. Trust me. Let me go ahead and give you some troubleshooting ways you can troubleshoot this. What this will do is that if you get issues, it will throw errors here. Some errors are just like, don't even worry about it. Example, like unhandled error cleaning up build images. This gets relevant, obviously, when you start building on an application, but this is the early days. We just need to get going here, right? So let me show you the first one that you want to use if you run into an error. You'll get an error here, but there may not be a lot of context around that error. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do Firebase functions log, semicolon log. No, not like the ants on a log, like the celery with the peanut butter and the raisins on it. Okay, maybe not. Maybe that was just a me thing. Hit enter, and what we'll do here is we're going to get the entire log of that deployment. I know this looks like a ton, and you're just like, Corbin, what the heck? I'm not going to read all that. Don't worry. I'm not either. So we can just go ahead and just drag my cursor here, copy this entire thing, and then put that into a cursor AI chat, put that into a ChatGPT chat, and then simply ask like, what went wrong and how can I fix this? Give a little bit more context. I'm using Firebase. I'm trying to deploy Firebase functions. This is the first time I'm deploying Firebase functions, etc., etc., etc. First troubleshoot. Let me help you out here. There is going to be a chance here when you deploy, you're going to get an error message that is relevant to a specific service account. So if I come back here to Google Cloud, as we set up in the previous tutorial here, you're going to come up here to these three hamburger, and we're going to go to IAM and admin. What you need to understand about Google Cloud and what's happening in Google Cloud is, I would say like 80% of what you need to do when it comes to the back end, we have a nice little user interface with Firebase. It just looks nice. But sometimes you do got to come back to Google Cloud here, as there will be certain things that need to be set in order for things to work. So one of the big ones is IAM and admin permissions. Another thing that you will get very comfortable with is, actually I can just show you through here. So let's say I'm in a function here, we run an error, we're like, yeah, what the heck just happened? We come up here to these three ellipses and we hit view logs. You'll get comfortable with this view as well. What you need to understand about this is think about this as like the debug or the console log on a computer, or what am I saying? How do I say this so simple? Okay, so basically it's like when you hit expect, and then for the front end, when you go over here and you go to console, this is like the front end version of that, but the back end. If that didn't make sense, watch my front end series. But the idea is like we're going to get messages here of everything that's occurring with the function for debugging purposes and also just seeing your function run. Y'all know that though, the error you may face. So once you put in that terminal command for functions log, if it says something around the realm of, let me go and zoom down, y'all. You're like, Corbin, what are you doing? You're too big. My bad. Let's scroll down here. So if it says something, it may not. And that's kind of the beauty of software, right? But basically, there's going to be a high probability chance here that it's going to say something along the lines of, this is going to be your project number and compute, and then developer.gserviceaccount.com. If it says that doesn't have access to XYZ thing, you're going to come to this Google Cloud. You're going to go, I can't say that. IAM and admin. You're going to do grant access, and then you're going to paste that line. I'll just go and do it with y'all real quick. So for example, copy this. This would be showing up in your logs. You want to just have it here. Or if you do have it here, then just add these roles, right? So you can hit grant access here. There we go. And then the two roles that you are going to need to give access to is going to be editor, and then the log one. I'll be honest with y'all. I've done software development for different applications in the past. I know and I'm aware that the editor role is relevant here, but I was getting one that was requesting me to put the logs writer as well. So I went ahead and just did it. This is hit or miss. You may need to do it. You may not. Proceed. Once you've confirmed that you've done both things here, I'm going to give you some general ways of approaching this so you don't get stuck in loops of AI, get frustrated, and you're like, you know what? I'm done. First thing, this line right here. Functions.auth.user.onCreate async user. You may get an error that throws can't read user. Don't understand what user is. What does this mean? Let me see if I can get the exact error message. Cannot read properties of undefined reading user. Oh no. That has to do with the fact that right now in your package.json and the way you're approaching this, there's two things that may be occurring here. One, you're not using node 18. Alternatively, you haven't actually done Firebase functions at that version. If either of those two are not correct, then you're going to run into that error. I'm realizing in this series, probably the more valuable stuff is going to be me telling you how to troubleshoot errors rather than just giving you the code, right? Like in a lot of tutorials like this, it'll be like, oh yeah, here's the code. Have fun. No. That's definitely not the way you want to get taught on this topic, especially when it comes to coding, because it can get very frustrating. We are going to go. And what you want to do is what I suggest you to do is I wouldn't even run this on your first go. I would, to comment out, it'd be either control. Actually, I don't know it on Windows. So if you know it on Windows, let me know in the comments down below. But at least on Mac, it's command, and then you get a little slash here. This will comment out all the code, and we're good to go. E.g., as in this won't actually be run, and we'll only run hello world. If I were you, and I'm just approaching this, I would just start with this. Hello world, functions v2, import this, like start with this. Why? Just get one function deployed correctly. How do you know if it's deployed? Come to your functions here. If you see it there, there's no red. Okay, you're good. You got one. Now comes the next one, which is the onCreate, which is the actual one we care about. Then try that one. Another little pointer here when it comes to deploying is that when you do deployments, especially if you do Firebase deploy, basically the way that it works in order to ensure that when the application gets bigger, you will deploy faster, is that if there is no changes associated with the function itself, it's going to skip it. So I believe it'll show it in this example. So it should skip hello world here, but because I add, like an S to the comment, it's going to redeploy that one. So this is very useful in the sense of like, maybe you want to redeploy it, but you don't want to change any of the relevant code. Just add a comment, add an S, just do something. And then what you'll see here is that it should skip hello world, but then redeploy, generate, or create new user. So I guess it didn't skip hello world. But the point being is that if you see that little, there's like a little purple text where it'll say it'll skip the function. You want to make sure it doesn't skip the function and actually redeploys it. Just add a comment. Comments in this context are when you do 2 slashes here. This is stuff that the program doesn't actually read. This is for you to read. Perfect. Let's go and do it then. So all we really need to do, what we need to do is we're going to Command L here. And I'll be honest with y'all, Cursor AI might not give us the correct code because what happens here, these AI models will opt for the most upgraded version of these dependencies, e.g. 6.0 here, because they're just assuming that the most upgraded version is the best way to go. Therefore, you're going to run into issues where you run into loops. And that's kind of some of the pitfalls of AI when it comes to more tricky situations. We're going to go ahead and try this together. If it's bad code, I'll tell you how to fix it. We are doing a Gen 1 function here. We want to do a onCreate function that when a new user is created and we set the database, their email. I know my English is not perfect in this context, but AI understands. So here we go. I'm going to copy this, paste it over, and then let's play around with it. This code isn't horrible, but there's a couple things missing. First thing that's missing is an async. This allows us to make sure we set all the docs within our onCreate function, so when the user loads in, it isn't like bad, e.g. no data. But this code, for the most part, gets you where you want to be, right? So we're using the right Firebase functions. We're using admin here. This is always important. Typically in code, we're going to do an admin.initialize app. This is relevant. You're going to need this line. This isn't just me playing around. 100% need that line. And then from there, what you'll notice is that in the test file here, everything's set up perfectly. And we'll just bring it over. But this is just so I can write it out for y'all. Make sure you do, cross your T's, dot your I's. Everything is set perfectly except the fact that we don't have an async here. So make sure to add that async here. This is very relevant. For the other parts, though, we seem to be pretty solid here. Now, if you're wondering, basically, how the heck does it know what the UID is or the email? The way this works is since it's natively integrated with Firebase auth, what we did in the previous tutorial here, user.uid is a specific variable that's able to grab during the creation of that user process. Same with user.email that exists. This isn't like where is it coming from, Corbin? It's just coming through the authentication, and because it's natively integrated, makes our lives a lot easier to do this kind of function. So now that that's done, and as I said, at the end of this tutorial or end of this series, you have all my code in that little Git repository in the description down below. It's not there yet. Okay, I haven't finished yet. From here, though, let's do it. I'm going to go and delete this second gen function here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to keep it so that when I do share this code, y'all can play around with V2 here in the context of Node.js. I'm just going to comment it out because I don't need it. For now, though, we have a couple things. So console log obviously is going to show us consoles within the Google Cloud Console / in your emulator. And then obviously we're going to have an error, which is a catch error. So if anything goes bad, we know what's up. Now that we've done this, though, let me go and describe this. This right here will make a lot more sense once I do one test run with you. But for now, all you need to understand is that there's going to be a global doc, like I described earlier, users. Then we're going to do specifying it by the user's UID. This allows us to give very specific data to that user. And then we're going to set a doc called user profile. And then within user profile, we'll do profile image, user email. I'm going to show you a little bit of storage play here. From here, though, this is where we can set up other docs. Maybe there is a doc you want other than user profile, user settings, other than user settings, XYZ, whatever's relevant. These are the docs that we initialize on user creation. These are docs that are relevant to our program. Basically, if a new user signs up to your software and you're only setting the user email and the user's profile image, there's a chance that you're not optimizing the way you approached Firestore in the context of, obviously, if you're providing value as a software, you need to provide value points, data, stuff that the user cares about. Okay, let's just go ahead and run through this so this makes a little bit more sense. Let's start the emulator. As we saw in previous tutorials, it's going to be Firebase emulator start. Enter. Emulator is running. We're going to go. Anyone that's facing issues with that, go to your firebase.json here, scroll down, make sure you have emulator ports identified. Now that we've done that, though, we're officially launched. You should see Firestore emulator on. You see functions emulator on. Okay, let's get started. Sign in with Google. Add an account. Sign in with Google. Right now, it's going to be an error because we haven't set up the logic past this. But what you'll notice is that, as we did in the previous tutorial, we have auth. And then on top of that, in our Firestore, look at that. This is pretty cool, y'all. So we have the global doc of users. All users will go here. Then we have the unique identifier for that user, Bob. I remember Bob. And then we have a doc that is created through that function right off the bat. User profile, profile image, user email. Now, in theory, you probably want to do this as a map. You'd want to do this as an additional doc in order for storage reasons. But for now, I'm just trying to show you what's going on here. So now that we've set up this, and basically how this works is that, in theory, if I sign up again, we could either sign up as orange or a new account here. Watch this. Boom. There we go. New account, new UID. Now let's make this work. Yeah, everything looks good here. We're going to close this. And what you'll see in the next tutorial here is we're going to create a whole separate backend folder, but it's going to be in Python. It's going to be for the purpose of functions we actually run throughout our application. And that is also why I said earlier of like, well, if you're going to do an on create and create documents for a user on a first time, you'll probably have more than just user profile depending on your application and your use case. Maybe not. Coming over to our Firebase.js, we got to do a couple things. First thing, make sure that with the Firebase Firestore, for now, just go to import these. Get Firestore, doc, get doc, connect Firestore emulator. Once you have those, we're going to initialize them for the entire project. So we're going to come down here and do const db get Firestore app. And then we'll make sure that we reference this. This line's extremely important. If you don't put this line, nothing's going to work. Connect Firestore emulator. At least nothing's going to work in the emulator. DB localhost 8080. Once you have all that set up, remember the rule of thumb when it comes to this Firebase.js file is that whatever you import up there, make sure you export down there so we can use it throughout our application. Other than like connect to Firestore emulator and connect to auth emulator, don't need to do that. Okay, step 1 is down. That also means that if, for example, we do another piece of logic here in the future, such as on snapshot, or do on snapshot here, comma, I would export on snapshot here as well, so we can use it in our application. For now, step 1 is done. Step 2, we need to make sure that we have Firestore rules that are within our project. Right now, they exist in Firebase. If I come to my Firestore database here and I go to rules, they exist here. But they don't exist in our project yet, so let's make sure we do that. In order to do that, we're going to do the lines of Firebase init Firestore. Firebase init Firestore. Hit enter. Now, I don't have to do this completely, but you will need to do this. All you need to do is hit enter, enter, and then all that is going to do is create a file down here called firestore.rules. So enter. This is asking me if I want to overwrite the file that currently exists. I would say no here, but for you, you just hit enter, enter. You're going to go. Once you have Firestore rules here, here's some example rules you can copy if you want to do so. Basically, what I'm doing here is basically giving the user the ability to access their documents if they choose to do so. So we're doing users, their UID, allow to read, write, etc. More context here, just simply highlight, Command L, Control L, back to ChatGPT, Claude. So once we do that, though, we need to make sure, I'm going to go ahead and just Control C. I'm going to get out of that real quick. What I suggest you to do, just for good practice, is going to deploy these Firestore rules. So do Firebase, deploy only Firestore rules. Just get them deployed. For now, though, they should be showing up in our emulator. And what we can do to test that is if I come over here, I'm going to hit Control C. I'm going to hit Firebase emulator start. And then in order to ensure that they are working in our emulator here, if I come down to Firestore rules right here, let's just say, let's go and do this real quick, y'all. Say we got this right here. Let's get it fully loaded up real quick. What we should see here is that when I make a change here and hit save, we should see like Firestore rules updated. So if I do this, add S here, there we go. Rules updated. If you see that, you're on the right track. Perfect. So with all that set now, let's go ahead and jump over to dashboard.js, explain a little bit of this code. When referencing the ability to get data from Firestore and the database itself, we're doing doc and get doc. This is going to allow us to reference the doc itself. When I say doc, this is like little data points. Get doc is actually trying to grab the data from said doc. We can also set docs. We can also have it so it's an on listener. So if there is a change in the document, then we do something different in the UI. Sign out, self-explanatory. We're going to have an entire button that is purpose out of auth is to sign out the user. So to show you what this looks like, I'm going to come over here to the emulator, and then I'm going to simply come over to let's get started here. Sign in with Google, add account, and here we go. So once we log in, welcome to dashboard, we have the specific user's email from the database, and then right now I just have like 10 random quotes that just cycle through every time you log in. And then if you hit log out here, we're logged out. Hit it again, sign in. Remember, this is specific to the user. Therefore, we should see Auto Raccoon, really random Google, I know. Auto Raccoon's email show up again. Click, pretty good. Now let's go ahead and set it up so we get an image here. And let me explain a little bit more here. So if I hit inspect here, make console, before we do that, what you'll notice is that I have this entire console log associated with the user's data. So I'm going to make this make sense a little bit to you as well. So where this is coming from is if I come over to our code here, scroll up, I'm doing a console log of current user. This is all the data associated with the user. So we can grab everything we'd want from that user, but all we're grabbing in this context, all we care about is our ability to reference the users doc. Users, global users. I'm going to be saying users a lot in this video. Firestore, that's that doc right there. Okay, so global users, oh, UID. So what is the specific UID? User UID. Okay, so we're in this path now. We're in the specific user ID path. Okay, what do we want from the specific user then? Oh, we want the profile image and the email. So we're going to reference this doc now that we just outlined here. We're going to get it like this. From here, we're going to go ahead and say user data. How do we know if the data exists? We're going to say data off the user profile, referencing that data point. And then when we reflect it in the front end of the UI, we reflect it with the actual data points names, e.g. user profile dot profile image, user profile image, user profile dot user email, user profile dot user email, Auto Raccoon. Two major things you need to know about that. First major thing, this is not optimized logic. Optimized logic in this context is that we would use some form of a local storage where, e.g., we would store data on the user's browser so that every single time a user loads in, we're not doing Firestore reads, which can burn cost at scale. Basically, you want your application to communicate with the backend in any context as limited as possible, because this is what causes cost when you have a lot of users. Imagine you load in a user's profile, Firestore reads 20 different data points, scale that up to 1,000 different users loading in their user profile, 20,000 data points being read, scale that up, 10,000 of those users or 500 of those users reload their page, gets read again. Local storage is key. I'll have to do some videos on that. Let's put a bow on this video though by showing you how to get a profile image, which will kind of allude to our tutorial here when it comes to storage and what storage means. So coming over to index.js, we're going to set up some logic here where we're going to randomly select different images. This is a little fun. Let's go ahead and get some images. All right, to get these play around images here, let's just create 2 profile pics. cat or dog? I'm gonna say, give me a goofy looking dog. I'm gonna do square, enter. Need to add it again, enter. Okay, I guess that's against their policy guidelines. I'm not too sure why. Okay, give me a dog on a surfboard. Let's try it on a surfboard, like a profile. So we're gonna go ahead and go with square aspect ratio. Give me a dog on a surfboard, like a profile picture. Send. Idea here is that obviously we can give the user the ability to upload their own profile photo, but any good SaaS product typically has a filler profile photo that is on brand. Let's go with this one. And then from here, we're gonna do the same thing, but we'll do it for the cats. Hit cat. All right, we'll definitely go with this one. Got our profile pics, let's rename them. Come back over here, we're gonna go to build. We're gonna go to storage here. In storage, we need to get started. So we're gonna go ahead and just say starting test mode, next, done. Typically, if you're in the USA, you wanna use NAM5 because it's the central of the USA. So we give the most optimized way of accessing functions to the nation. Once we do that, let's go ahead and just create a folder here. We'll say default profile. And if you feel like you've learned something up to this point, make sure to leave a like. It's completely free. And we'll keep going here. Default profile. I'm going to go ahead and add both those images. So once we have these uploaded here, you'll notice that I called one the cat profile and then one the dog profile. Let's go ahead and set up some logic here so we automatically choose one for a new user. Now, storage has security around it as well of who can access what. This is relevant for SaaS development, but for now, just to show you logically how it's done, simply click this little URL right here for both. Okay, so now we have both here. You'll notice it's associated with our actual application. Let's jump back over to the code. Here we go. So in order to do that, all we need to do is simply provide a variable that's going to be choosing between these two different images. So the entire URL here, and then we're going to use a const here that's going to identify which one we choose. So random profile image, which we'll then put here, and this will set the user's profile image. Let's see if it works. And also logically, all you need to do is this. Command L, or I guess I could have just selected the file. So let's just select the file. Simply provide both URL of images here, and then just say have it so for profile image, we randomly select between these two images, and then you should get very similar code to what I just received here. Let's see if it works. It's very simple. Are we a dog or are we a cat? Let's get started. Sign in with Google. New account. We're a cat. All right, just to show you how this works here, though, is so we have cat, panda, panda. Therefore, if I log out, that is unique data to panda, panda. What you'll notice is that it isn't going to switch to dog, right? This is data that's already set with that one off. Go to panda, panda. There we go. Cat, email. Let's go ahead and see if we can find a dog one, though. We'll sign up with a new account here. New account, sign up Google. And we got a dog one off rip on the second one. Perfect. Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. John Lennon. Okay. Cool. Let's see this in its completion. Quick side note for Firebase emulator here, you'll notice that console logs that we put in our code, e.g. new user created UID right there, show up here as well. Useful to use if needed. Last thing, when testing and developing, sometimes you can get too much data, get a little overwhelmed. What I suggest you to do is go to your emulator here, hit Control-C, and then just simply restart it. This is going to refresh all this data here, start on ground zero. This video is going to be long. I can already tell from how many segments I've recorded. This might be over an hour. I doubt it. Probably like 50 minutes, 40 minutes maybe. All right, let's connect the dots. We have successfully made it. So when we sign up, sign in with Google, add a new account, generate information, make an account, this creates a user with unique information such as their email, a uniquely selected profile image that is reflected in our Firestore here with user, unique identifier, user profile, profile image, and user email. Therefore, from start to finish, we now have the ability to have users authenticated with accounts, and on top of that, create unique specific data associated with that user. So if Chicken Raccoon logs out, Chicken Raccoon logs back in, we got the same data. That completes this lesson. This was a long one. I know there's a lot of stuff going on here, but this gets you pretty far into creating a software application, at least in the sense of authentication, which is very important in the context of software, as giving unique information to each user is kind of the whole point, unless you're building something else entirely different for a whole entire different process. Make sure you leave a like. It's completely free. I'll leave more information down below. And as I said at the beginning of the video as well, check out bumpups.com. If you run into issues as well, you can put in this entire video and you can get like step-by-step directions on how to solve issues, what I went over in today's video, etc. Sound good? Next video will be going over functions, leveraging API, specifically artificial intelligence API, to get some AI outputs. Let's jump into the next video. I'll see you there. We have a unique user, UID, auth, current user. Those are two random videos. That's my face. I'll see you in the next video.